I'm going to go ahead and put the rosette holes in the panel. Yeah. And my hole punch doesn't seem to be. Chopper Bob here, and the work continues on this 5723 window Volkswagen. The patch panel is in right here. That's the one that we made by hammer forming. It still needs to have the bottom flange welded to the existing flange on the panel that's here. But what we're moving towards now is getting this section cut out, ready to replace the I don't know what you'd call that, the bottom rear quarter panel, patch panel. And of course the challenge is this line right here is nice and crisp, and it's flat, and it's not all beat up. The bus itself is, I can't really complain, it's the same age as me, and I felt like it looks this morning. So, but the thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that your lines are okay. So one of the first things I did was I put a level on the belt line trim to see if the van is sitting level. But what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be taking a bunch of measurements to see if we can't get this lined out so that when I make my cuts, the object here is to cut the original piece out of the body and cut this piece, the patch panel, so that it's about 3/4 of an inch too tall, 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch too tall. Get it located in place, get it locked in probably with some Clecos, and then scribe a line on the body and cut and sand up to that scribe line so that when this piece slides in there, I have a nice tight butt for a butt weld across it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start taking some measurements, and I am going to get a base measurement for right here. What I come up with is 13 and 15/16 to this, and I have to add, let's see, 13 and 5/16 and 2.5. So if I did my math right, that's 15 and 13/16. Now the next critical item is this point right here, because that has to line up fairly close to the one on the repair panel so that you have a continuation of the wheel opening on the side. And that is probably the one that I'm going to be doing. That's probably going to be my base point, because I don't want a huge gap there up and down between this piece and this piece. There's a lot of fudging that I can do to make that work, but for now, what I'm going to say is that that is 20 and 1/16. So now with that recorded, the next thing that I want to do is figure out where I'm going to put my initial cut. I had set this as where I probably wanted it to end up, but basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the top of these pits. This is the highest most spot on the car where I've got pits in the base metal, at least from what I've stripped off, and this is the only place where there's been any rust. The rest of this along and through here Looks fairly solid. I'm going to go up 24 and a half. To make the cut. And so that means on this part right here, I'm going to need to go up from the bottom. Let's put some tape on it. I've already written on it. I don't like writing on it. It's a mess to clean up. So 24 and a half. I'm going to want to go up 3/4 of an inch higher than that. So 25 and a quarter. So we got that recorded. 25 and a quarter plus 24 and a half. And that should get me taken care of. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take this old tape off of here. They say that a 57 Chevy tail fin, if it's beat up like this, you're going to have a hard time getting it lined back up. But the curves in this, without a buck, I'm not exactly sure how you would duplicate this. There's 2 dents right here with a ridge in between them. And I have worked on this trying to get this close to being round again. And it is just a booger. And I kind of want to get this closer than what it is. Butt weld needs to have a nice straight line to follow. This one obviously has a very nice curve to it. This one not so much, and I've worked out a series of dents up in here, and I know this isn't the area that I'm going to be welding in. I'm going to be welding down here, but all of this is making pulls on the metal that it shouldn't have. Turn off dolly, trying to get this ridge down and trying to raise this portion right here. You heard that little ting every once in a while. That's when you're actually hammering on dolly, which tells you you need to move the dolly out of the way a little bit. I thought about maybe just going ahead and going up higher. Usually I want to leave as much original sheet metal as I possibly can, and I could come up to here with this, and well, I'd have to be down just a little bit because you need to have a little bit of fudge factor to get your butt weld nice and tight. But there's a couple problems with this. One is this comes up in an area where there's really, I spent a lot of time working on these dents right here, and they're still nowhere near perfect. They were huge, well, relatively speaking. But the other thing is this basically slices the tail light in half, and trying to get that lined up. I mean, I can do it. But the truth of the matter is, between cutting the tail light in half, the tail light hole in half, and then all of this damage in this area right here, I think I'm better off being down here low, because this has less damage, and I think I can pull this into shape better than I can pull this into shape. Because this up here, basically what needs to be done is probably a panel that goes clear up to the belt line. is what would be needed to make this right. And I understand the owner of this vehicle, just that's not where what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put some 24.5-inch marks on it. Tricky part about this is because the curve here is compound, the tape's going to want to climb or dive, and so you have to be careful to make sure that you're following the line as closely as you can. Tape catches fire and I have to rip it off the vehicle real quick. I'm going to go ahead and just follow it around with the Sharpie. I'm just kidding about the catching on fire. But the thing is, the adhesive does melt and the tape has been known to slide off. And so you want to be aware of that. Now, the next area that I'm going to have to be concerned with is the fact that this part of the inner wheel housing is completely separated from the vehicle. So it's going to come off with this piece. The other thing that I'm going to do right now is I'm only going to cut to within about 3/4 of an inch of the engine compartment door, because I'm really not sure how I'm going to handle the attachment of the panel at that end. I'm either going to cut the flange off and butt weld it down through there, or if it looks like the flange, I need to get in there so I can see what's going on. Once I get in there and I see what's going on, I'll know whether or not to plan on the flange actually going over and doing a series of rosette welds down through there. But what I'm going to be doing now is cutting this thing up. I'm going to get the homemade floor panel out of there so that I don't have any problems with cutting into it, or grabbing the cut-off wheel. So, and I may use a body saw on this, so it's going to get a little bit noisy. Okay, so I'm ready to make the first cut. I've gone ahead and removed the bumper mounting bracket to make room for what I'm going to be doing here. And I've gone ahead and laid out some tape. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to cut, there's a brace in behind this area right here. So I'm going to cut to the outside of it, and then I'm going to cut hopefully below the bottom of what's left of the floor flange and get this piece out of the way, and we'll take and then assess what's going to happen with the rest of it. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and just use the cut-off wheel on the electric angle grinder, because I'm not going to be worrying about distortion over here with it. Can't help but wonder if what's left of the floor is holding this up, or whether this is holding what's left of the floor up. I think I'm going to go ahead and just try and cut this out right here. got rust in past the panel because it's blistering right here. So I'm gonna have to take the spot welds out regardless. Identify the spot welds in through here, and it basically just comes over to this lip right here. So if I can get the spot welds cut out, and I'm probably going to have to, not exactly sure how I'm going to do that right there, but get this spot weld cut out here and slide it back in there. I think that will make for a better product because basically this is rotten and it's not really going to hold anything, and obviously this is rotten and is not going to hold anything. The owner was by and we talked about a path forward, that there really wasn't a lot to attach stuff to make this work. So what we've decided to do is to replace enough that it makes a good solid part, but not so much that it goes crazy. I mean, the truth of the matter is that there is a lot of damage from what the battery, apparently the battery was on this side, it either exploded or cooked over from overcharging or something. Got battery acid everywhere, and the previous owner, I guess, didn't clean any of it up. They just left it. And so basically everything back here is rotten. And so the first thing I did was I came in here, which is very pitted, but I sanded it down, and I believe I can make good welds to that spot. I don't think I can do butt welds on any of this. So what I'm planning on doing is doing lap welds with rosettes, using weld through primer, and then seam sealing it. And I normally don't like to see that, but the truth of the matter is it's probably going to hold up as well as the rest of the van, the stuff that's not being fixed. So with that said, I'm gonna get in there and see if I can't cut the bottom part of the wheelhouse off and get a patch panel made to get that extended down so that I can start building off of that. Once I get that done, then I can start replacing that floor section. So with that said, I'm going to you'll be hearing some music, I'm sure. Now in this case I drew the line first and I'll be putting the tape on. So let's see if I can get in there. This is going to be the fun part, is actually trying to work my way through those openings. piece that I cut out 3.5 by 11 3/4, all approximate. The thing about doing the lap with rosettes is you don't have to be super accurate. If this were a different vehicle, then I'd want to do a butt weld. But since this one is so difficult to get into to do an accurate butt weld, this makes far more sense for this vehicle. Basically went ahead and put a brake in it that matched the OEM piece as close as possible, and you can probably see some lines here. I rolled it through the English wheel to get just a little bit of a curve to it. And so now we'll go ahead and put the joggles in and get it lined up. And I usually, on this machine, I'll go three turns past finger tight, which usually will get me to where I need to be. That is what gives you your lap over the existing piece. Now the trick is going to be to get these pieces up, because they need to come up as well. I will go over with the hammer and probably on the vise and get that last little bit of mess out of the corners there, and it'll be ready to punch holes in. My wedge. Okay, so there I've knocked the corner out on it. Now to get it over there and punch some holes in it for the rosettes, test fit it, and put weld through primer on it. Okay, I didn't record the welding in of this part for several reasons. One is the only thing you'd be able to see is probably the back of my head and my hand trying to keep my welding helmet so I could see out of it. This was sort of like the perfect storm of bad welds. First off, the weld through primer is always fun to weld through. And then of course the steel that has been exposed to a lot of battery acid and has rust pits in it. I tried to clean it up the best I could, but it was not clean particularly. And to be quite honest, I think I was having a bit of an off day. I don't know whether it was just one of my off days or whether I let all the potential problems psych me out. But at any rate, it is, I've got good penetration. It may not be the prettiest, but I've got good penetration. Of course, over here in the corner, I'll have to tie this in. You can't see what's happening over there. I'll be tying this into this flange, and I'll be running seam sealer down through there. And of course, I'll seam seal this and seam seal the underside of it. And with the weld through primer and the seam sealing, you know, it's probably got a good decade, maybe two. So I think there's other things on this van that are probably going to be needing attention before this does. And if it's painted and taken care of, you know, I think maybe even 3 decades this will be in here. So the next part, I've got here again, it's very pitted over here, but it's solid. And it's going to be a challenge to weld, but I'm probably going to bring this floor section over to here and lap weld it in here. I probably won't put a joggle in it just because the joggle should be underneath and I can't do that over here. So I'm probably just going to come in and see if I can't. I'm probably going to have to put an L bracket back in here to meet the floor. I mean, and that's the other thing, is every place that you've got a seam on this is full of rust, and when you go to weld it, it draws it up. There you can see the pits right there, and you can see the pits down here in the floor. But I'll get this piece made and get it in here. I'm debating what I want to do where it meets the replacement panel, whether I want to hammer form this big piece out or whether I just want to put take a piece of angle, break an angle of 18 gauge and use the shrinker to make it fit the contour of the panel. I may do that. That way I can set the floor down on it, tack it in, take it off of the vehicle and weld it in place, and then bring it over and put these welds in. As you can see, I've got the welding blanket. I'm trying to make sure that no stray sparks get to places that can cause me problems here in the engine compartment and fuel tank. But at any rate, we've got that going right now, and it's obviously a lot better than it was, and I think it's going to be better than that homemade panel, because it does fit so tight. The homemade panel didn't necessarily fit tight. So anyway, we're moving right along. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, set notifications. If you got any questions, be sure and give me a comment, ask me. I'd be glad to help you out. Maybe you can help me out. Anyway, for now, Chopper Bob out.